हम छोटे छोटे बालक सब करते हमसे प्यार। सारी धरती अपनी है, सारा है संसार। तितली जैसे पंख लगाकर इधर उधर उड़ जाए। जहाँ जहाँ से गुजरे हम, वहाँ फूल खुशी के खिल जाए। भाई भाई से नाता हो, हाथ जोड़ कर करे प्रार्थना। रहे देश में खुशहाली हरियाली। हम जब आते हैं ना, मम्मी 7 बजे उठती है ना तो 6 बजे उठ जाती है, तो मम्मी खाना ना पकाती है। हम लोग खा करके फिर उठते हैं, फिर स्कूल जाते हैं, स्कूल से आएंगे फिर अपना फिर काम में लग जाएंगे। फिर काम करके फिर स्कूल चले जाएंगे। फिर शाम को आएंगे, पानी आने झाड़ू वाड़ू करके फिर हम सो जाते हैं। अपने भाई बहनों का अकेले ध्यान रखते हैं। जब हम शाम को आते हैं ना, बर्तन काम करते जब मुश्किल रहता है हमको।
What were you doing the other day on the top of the roof?
उस दिन बारिश हुई थी ना, तो इसका पन्नी ना निकल गया था, तो बहुत चूना था, इसी के बाद ठीक कर रही थी मैं।
How old are you and how old is your brother?
मैं 10 साल की, 6 का।
What's your favorite part of the day?
स्कूल जाना, वहाँ पे अच्छी हमको शिक्षा भी मिलती है। वहाँ पे रहेंगे साफ सफाई से भी रहेंगे, अपनी बहन भाई को भी सफाई साफ से रहेंगे। यहाँ पे रहेंगे तो गंदे रहेंगे।
What's the biggest dream you have?
सपना कोई नहीं।
A criança é feita dos seus sonhos, tanto quanto das suas histórias, quanto dos seus afetos. Esse sonho é desejo de vida, é rumo, é sentido, é alento. A criança precisa disso para o seu vir a ser. Os sonhos alimentam a vida dela. Os sonhos trazem futuro possível para a criança. Por isso que jamais ela poderia perder a capacidade de sonhar.
Negligence is the opposite of providing children with a positive environment for development. There are many ways we see negligence. We see negligence occurring when children's basic needs are not met for food, for nutrition, for health. We see negligence when children's basic sanitation needs are unmet, and we see an increase in diarrhea diseases. We see negligence when children are left alone. They're not spoken to, they're not sung, they're not held, they don't feel love. There are so many forms of negligence. What happens, why negligence is so harmful for children, is because a child's environment helps the child become who they are. The more we put into the environment, the more positive we make it, the more nurturing, the more loving we make it, the better the child is. Every time we don't have that, then the child is devoid of that stimulation, of that environmental input. And that's why negligence is so harmful, especially in the first few years of life, when the body and the brain, it's asking for that interaction. It's asking for that input.
The brain actually starts to form just a few weeks after conception. So over the 9 months of pregnancy, the brain gradually develops to the point that at birth, in a full-term pregnancy, the brain looks remarkably like that of an adult, just much smaller. And so the issue here is that if the brain is getting good experiences, good caregiving, for example, stimulation, language, things like that, then brain development is much more likely to be normal. But if the brain is deprived of those experiences or gets bad experiences, then brain development is likely to be abnormal.
The children whose development is at risk are children who live in very difficult circumstances. Not a bad day here, a bad day there, but chronic, constant days, weeks, months, years, where there's very little positive interaction, where the level of stress is so high, particularly for people in deep poverty or in violent environments or dealing with serious mental illness like depression or substance abuse, where there's no time left to think about next week or tomorrow. It's trying to getting through the day. And where the home may be just very disorganized, not because parents don't love their children, but they're overwhelmed by their own life circumstances.
यहाँ पे जो लोग रहते हैं, ये जो बड़ी बड़ी बिल्डिंग बन रही है, तो अलग अलग जगह से आए हैं, बिहार से और क्या कहते हैं, बंगाल से, बिलासपुर से. तो ये लोग एक पैसा कमाने के लिए आए हैं. कुछ लोग ऐसे हैं जो गांव में जिनके ऊपर कर्जा चढ़ गया है, वो कर्जा उतारने के लिए, गांव में मकान बनाने के लिए, शादी ब्याह. तो अलग अलग कारण है इनके गांव से यहाँ आने का और यहाँ पे आके रोजगार करने का.
गांव में लिया हूँ. रोहित का तबीयत खराब हो गया था, तो ब्लड चढ़ाए, तो 50,000 रुपया अपने पास था, वो लग गया. उसको बड़ा पापा ब्लड दिया और उसका अपना पापा दिया, और खरीद कर एक थैला चढ़ा, तो 30-35,000 रुपया कर्जा हो गया है. वो सीमेंट का बोरा वोरा उठाते और गिट्टी उट्टी और पत्थर मिला को मसाला बनाते हो बदरपुर का. 15 दिन पर कभी मिल जाता है 3500. है तो दिक्कत वाला, फिर भी अपना दिक्कत से करता हूँ. बच्चे के लिए तो हर परेशानी सहना पड़ता है.
तो घर पे यही है बस. अब उनका ख्याल रखते रखते ही मतलब उनका टाइम होता है, और क्या करेंगे. वो जब माँ बाप बोल के जाते हैं कि इनका ख्याल रखना जब तक हम नहीं आए, तो घर पे देखते हैं.
बाबू को रखते हैं, जब रहता है खाना खिलाते हैं, चीज किन देते हैं, पानी पिलाते हैं, लैट्रिन करता है, घर धो देते हैं.
And how old is Kira?
किरण 6 साल.
Don't you have anyone that could help you?
ऐसा तो कोई नहीं है कि 5 बजे के बाद इसको छोड़ के कोई मदद करने वाला नहीं. डर रहता है कि कहूँ नाली उली में गिर जाए ना, सड़क पर गेट पर से निकल जाएगा तो कहूँ छपा भी पड़ जा सकता है. बच्चा है वो किरण भी, अभी उसे संभाल पाएगा कि नहीं पाएगा, ऐसे दिल में हमेशा बना रहता है.
Every parent wants the best for their child. You can be talking to a mother in the high, remote areas of Laos. You can be talking to a mother in inner city Nairobi. You can be talking to a father in the Andean mountains. You can be talking to a parent in Geneva. You can talk to a parent anywhere. They all want the best for their child. And they want to create the environment that will foster their children's growth and development. Oftentimes, as societies, we fail to support parents in that function. We fail to support parents in providing them the support they need for their children. That's when we start to see an immediate sort of child's toxic environment start to build. high levels of stress, high levels of conflict, lack of food, lack of nurturance. We know all of that together is a toxic environment because it's not allowing the child to develop to their full potential. It's blocking their growth, it's blocking their development.
Para o bebê, para o recém-nascido, a sensação de fome é uma ameaça à vida. Então, essa percepção de que algo vai mal dispara o alarme que é o choro. Na medida em que ele tem um adulto, um cuidador, que pode ser a mãe, que reconhece o que aquele choro quer dizer e atende essa necessidade, ele vai ter uma memória de satisfação. Então, diminui os hormônios do estresse e ele segue o ciclo. A criança que não tem essa satisfação atendida vai ter, durante um período prolongado, a convivência com o estresse, hormônios do estresse, e isso gera uma toxicidade. Aos poucos, a criança vai ficando irritadiça, apática, né? Ela perde peso, ela perde sinapses cerebrais, quer dizer, todo aquele processo de ramificação e contato entre as diferentes áreas do córtex cerebral vai ser prejudicado numa criança que vive num contexto como esse.
When we look at data from the Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey, which is UNICEF's survey, a household-level survey on understanding young children's environments, we find that on average, only about 50% of the children were breastfed the previous day, younger than 6 months of age. And we know that's the important nutrition and bonding component.
A child who is an undernourished child who is just sitting like this, is not bothered to explore the environment, doesn't want to do things because he doesn't have energy. So the learning gets affected by it. A child who participates, runs around, is active, is learning because all his reflexes make him get information and knowledge from the sensory stimulation.
We know that when children grow up with very low iron, with very low vitamin A content, vitamin A content can actually impair vision. So children can go up blind if they have sufficiently low. So again, if you give a drop of vitamin A to a kid, to an infant, you can avoid blindness. Now, the rate of return has to be nearly infinite. If, for a few pennies, you're going to give a person a sighted life versus a blind life. IQ is substantially impaired by children with low iron suffering from anemia. So if you give a child fortified diets so that you give them iron pills even, or zinc, or some of the other micronutrients, that has substantial effects in promoting the well-being of the children.
Em termos de alimentação, do que vocês se alimentam?
Arroz e feijão. Aí quando tem frango, nós comemos frango. Quando não tem frango...
fígado, come picadão, quando tem essas coisas.
Entendeu?
Salsicha, linguiça.
Ah, difícil. É difícil.
Fruta, uma vez, 2 vezes ao mês, se nós fazemos uma feirinha.
A gente, graças a Deus, não chega a passar fome totalmente. Mas a criança só não vive de feijão e arroz, não é verdade? Não vê se... A criança precisa de um danone, precisa de uma bolacha, precisa de um... Em questão de higiene também. Então, é muito complicado nisso. É muita situação que não é fácil. Sinceramente, não é fácil.
Challenges we have, to be honest, like where they are sleeping, we don't have enough bed. Also, food is a problem. Honestly, there are days where we don't have. Like today morning, we didn't took breakfast, but I prepared water. Everybody took a cup of water, and we thank God.
A child that is not well nourished, there could be many causes. Most people think of food as a primary cause. They don't have enough food, and that is true in a lot of cases. But it's often also as a result of disease. That children lose, especially infants, young babies, lose the nourishment because they get sick. They have bouts of diarrhea, frequent diarrhea, and that causes them to become malnourished. So it's important that there be clean water and sanitation, for example. The malnutrition also comes as a result of poor caregiving practices on the part of the mom, the caregiver. If she's not nurturing the child, that can also contribute to the child not being able to really flourish. And the worst part of it is that it is completely preventable. It is not a disease that we don't have a cure for. It is completely preventable with just a few actions in terms of good nutrition and the right caregiving practices.
Problems of this magnitude tend to be transmitted from one generation to the next because the way people parent is heavily influenced by the way they were parented. And whether adults have the skills and the capabilities to provide a safe, stable environment for children is determined by whether they themselves were raised in a safe, stable environment. So somewhere along the line, the cycle has to be broken. And the science is telling us you can't bypass the adults.
A mother who is an undernourished mother is somebody who was an undernourished girl. And an undernourished girl becomes an undernourished woman and a mother and gives birth to a low birth weight baby. And the cycle just repeats and repeats. So you will have generations of children who are undernourished.
And that intergenerational transfer of malnutrition is very difficult to break.
Children growing up in poor homes, but otherwise good homes, but they're homes that don't have resources. You know, the daycare may not be that very good. There's not a lot of money in the home, but the parents are good parents. Even those children show some differences. The reason we think even in good homes, but when there are poor homes, there's an effect, is that there are certain aspects that are missing in the child's life. So one example, maybe the mom isn't very well educated and her own language isn't very sophisticated. So the language the child hears is sort of impoverished. And we know that the more years of schooling a mother has, the better the child's vocabulary. So even in a well-intending mother, a mother who really wants to do everything right for her baby, if she uses simple language, the child's language will be limited to some degree.
And people have counted the number of words and the gap between the children in the poorest families and the children in the professional families. And the figure that's often cited is 30 million words fewer by the age of 4 that children in welfare families hear than children in professional families.
Onde nós estamos indo?
Na festa do Mateus.
Na festa do Mateus.
Quack, quack, says the duck. And that's a little boy. What does he have? He has bubbles. Pop, 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 pop. Yeah, he has bubbles. There's the fish. And there's the duck. Quack, quack.
Na cabeça, ombro, joelho e pé.
And when you match those results to brain studies that we have done, you can see systematic changes in the areas of the brain responsible for language and literacy. Those areas are less specialized for language and literacy, depending on the opportunities to learn.
If a young child is hearing 30 million words less than their peer, already it's an uneven playing field. And then I ask you, what do words cost as an intervention? Nothing.
Você tira os óculos.
Eu? Ela não foi chegar.
Que cor que é essa daqui, ó? Amarelo.
Isso requer tempo, isso requer paciência, mas não requer dinheiro. Que para mim, de certa maneira, torna ainda mais importante a questão da informação. É difícil você falar para uma família que tem muita incerteza, que não sei se amanhã vou estar empregado ou não, a gente vai ter dinheiro para comer amanhã ou não, que recurso não importa. Recurso importa no sentido que você precisa de saber que você vai ter o mínimo para sobreviver, para você ter, digamos assim, a energia mental para interagir com a criança.
A maternidade, embora seja um momento lindo, né, é maravilhoso você ser mãe, porque você tem, né, nossa, um filho, um fruto, você parece com o seu companheiro, né, te traz um monte de expectativas, um monte de alegrias, né, aquele risinho, né, aqueles movimentos, aquele barulhinho, cheirinho. É uma delícia, mas é um movimento muito solitário. Quando você tem uma estrutura básica, então as pessoas saem para ganhar sua grana, né, e deixam o filho na escola ou deixam o filho com a mãe, é mais fácil você construir o sujeito mãe. Agora, quando você é mãe na diversidade, é muito complicado. Você tem que dar conta da sua casa, você tem que dar conta dos seus filhos, você tem que dar conta de você enquanto sujeito. Só que você, enquanto sujeito, sempre fica em último plano. Então eu fico pensando, às vezes, que esforço que essas mães fazem para poder cuidar dessas famílias tão amorosamente. Como ela rega essa família, se ela tem tão pouco tempo, se ela não tem tempo de olhar para si.
Eu me lembro um dia em que eu fui chamada como chefe da psicossomática para ajudar uma mãe que tinha um filho de 3 anos, a Pedrina, e essa criança tinha que amputar a mão. E eu tinha que preparar essa mãe e essa criança de 3 anos para amputar a mão. E, para minha surpresa, quer dizer, eu me senti totalmente debilitada, porque como é que eu vou dizer para uma mãe, num país como o nosso, que o seu filho vai ficar sem uma mão e sem suporte de continuação do tratamento, sem prótese? E, para minha surpresa, quando eu fui preparar a mãe, disse, doutora Vera, eu já sei que vai ter que amputar a mão. A senhora tem um emprego para me arrumar, que eu vou sair daqui para a rua, para mendigar. Existe um tabu até entre nós médicos, nós profissionais de saúde, que a gente dá conta de tudo. Né? Pode vir uma paciente com pneumonia, com gastroenterite, com desnutrição, que a gente vai tratar e a criança vai curar. Isso não é verdade. Porque a pneumonia é a ponta do iceberg. Por trás da pneumonia tem uma mãe que chove dentro da casa, que não come adequadamente porque não tem dinheiro para comprar comida, que não tem dinheiro para o vale transporte para voltar para o hospital. Então você pode curar uma criança dentro de um hospital público de pneumonia e essa criança vai ficar presa num ciclo vicioso, miséria, internação, reinternação e morte. Porque quando ela chegar em casa, ela vai adoecer de novo. Na realidade, a pneumonia é uma desculpa para a miséria aparecer. Primeiro, eu acho que você tem que cuidar da mãe, né? Tem um trabalho de enorme empatia com as mães. Por exemplo, mães que passaram por essa instituição ou que passaram na história da minha vida. E que eu percebi, por exemplo, que não adiantava você rotular essa mãe é insensível, essa mãe espanca, essa mãe é uma mãe fria. Não adianta, porque a gente não vai poder salvar essa criança. O primeiro caminho é você ter empatia e você se conectar com a dor dessa mãe. Se você não entender a criança que ela foi e não ajudá-la, através dessa compreensão, a se transformar como mãe, não tem saída.
Eu fui mãe muito cedo, aos 15 anos de idade. E aí, quando faltava 2 meses para mim fazer 16 anos, eu tive meu primeiro filho, entendeu? Aí, quando eu estava com 37 anos, eu me vi com 12 filhos. Quando uma delas, a Ana Júlia, estava com 9 meses, deu catapora nela. E a catapora dela virou varicela, recolheu. Mas como eu estava tão intertida no mundo das drogas, entendeu? Eu não... Demorou, entendeu? Para mim perceber que a minha filha estava doente, que ela estava morrendo. Aí fomos pro hospital, tudo. Aí chegando lá, o médico falou que ela ia ter que pôr uma UTI, que ela já estava morrendo já, né? Que ela já estava com falta de oxigênio. Aí a médica falou para mim ficar calma. Aí é tão ruim relembrar isso. Ela falou pra mim ficar calma, entendeu? Pra mim confiar em Deus. De só Deus naquele momento. Aí a hora que eu entrei no quarto, ela tava cheia de aparelho, entubada, que nem a gente vê na televisão. Então achei que eu nunca fosse passar por aquilo, né? A gente acha que a gente nunca vai passar por nada. Ela toda entubada assim, sem se mexer. Aí Deus pegou e me tocou, entendeu? Pensei comigo, e as drogas, eu tenho que parar de usar droga, entendeu? Pra trazer minha filha de volta. Foi quando eu peguei e falei, eu não vou mais colocar essa porcaria na minha boca. Eu comecei fumando maconha, entendeu? Comecei a usar droga com 9 anos de idade, entendeu? Quando eu completei 18 anos, a maconha já não fazia mais a minha mente, entendeu? Começou a ficar fraca, como se fosse um cigarro, entendeu? Aí eu vendo minha colega, entendeu? Esticando a carreirinha ali, eu peguei e falei, não, que eu vou usar ali, entendeu? Vou ver como é que não sei o quê, mesmo com medo. Fui e gostei.
E com 9
entendeu?
anos, o que te fez experimentar maconha?
A convivência com meu pai e minha mãe. Muita briga. Meu pai batia muito na minha mãe. Ele não batia na minha mãe assim, só um tapa. Não, ele queria bater nela pra ver o sangue dela, entendeu? Caindo. Ele tinha o prazer de sair tacando a cara dela na parede, fazer o L na cozinha. Entendeu? Eu tinha 6 anos de idade quando eu comecei a entender isso. Minha mãe, até hoje, ela não se conforma de eu lembrar, não é, Jairo? Minha mãe não se conforma, eu lembro de tudo. Lembro de tudo, entendeu? Do que ele fazia com a minha mãe.
E o que você sentia na época?
Muito ódio dele.
Violência doméstica faz parte do nosso cotidiano, né? E é um dos problemas mais graves, porque é uma repetição do comportamento.
Quando nós fazíamos os grupos de crianças, a gente começou a perceber que aquelas crianças que eram muito violentas, elas tinham processos na família de violência, de assistir ou de passar, né, por violência. E a família, ela é um modelo para a criança. Então, se a criança assiste o tempo todo relações violentas, ela não vai aprender outro meio de se relacionar que não seja aquele. Então, aquelas crianças onde as famílias se xingam, onde as famílias se batem, onde a família se viola, ela só consegue, na relação com o outro, reproduzir isso. Isso é horrível, né? Então, é um trabalho que você tem que fazer com a mãe, é um trabalho que você tem que fazer com a família, de resgatar esses vínculos. Mas quando a família passa por um processo de violência doméstica, ela destrói esses laços, porque você desaprendeu, né, o amor.
Eu queria ser uma mãe mais presente, uma mãe mais carinhosa. Eu queria ser uma mãe assim, entendeu? Que conseguisse sentar e escutar. Antes de, entendeu? Antes de escutar e já, não quero saber. Entendeu? Eu queria poder escutar eles. Entendeu?
Violence can be self-perpetuating. If you were born and raised in a family where there was a lot of harsh punishment and there was a lot of shouting, and if you witnessed the sort of violence between the mother and the father, that's pretty stressful. But when your turn comes to be a new father, you may not have any idea about what to do except, well, that's what they did. Well, that's what I'm going to do. Although it may not be a conscious decision by anybody.
Every parent is sometimes tempted to hit his children because you're tired and you get very angry. They do something very naughty, and you've told them 100 times, don't play with that heavy ball in the living room. And then they kick the heavy ball and the lamp breaks. And you get so angry. I do. A lot of parents do. And spanking is so easy because you are stronger than your child. And you hit your child and immediately he feels sorry. He's sorry he did it. So spanking feels like a solution. And you get rid of your anger in one go if you do it. And I've taught myself never hit your child because I know from reading the research how damaging it is. Because you think I'm only going to tap my child on the wrist. It will only hurt for a second and my child will learn not to do it. But the child sees something different. The child sees this huge person, twice his size. For me, it would be like seeing somebody nearly 4 meters tall. The child sees this giant come up to him, angry. He will start to feel the world is a dangerous place. I must protect myself. If you use any violence against your child, you raise the risk that your child will become a violent person, and you reduce the chance of your child becoming a calm and thoughtful person, which is what we all want for our children.
You know, beating is a power game. Spanking is a power game. You know, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, you're small, you're young, you can't defend yourself, so I can spank you. You know what? It's inflicting pain. That is the key word. We are inflicting pain.
Quando as crianças fazem mal educação, o monstro sente e a voz do monstro engole a voz da mãe e grita e sai pela boca da mãe. Grita muito.
Já aconteceu de você ver uma mãe gritar com uma criança? E como foi?
Children are the most sincere human beings you have ever seen. Most of what they say, 90%, is the truth. So the reason why we must listen to the children is that a lot of times they speak the truth. In the event of violation, if you have not learned to listen to your child or to realize that what children say is valid, a lot of abuse at that level just goes scot-free. Because you don't want to listen to your children. You're imagining what they're saying as not important. It's so important for every adult to get open space to listen to the voices of the child. Yes, it is so critical.
O reconhecimento de que a criança tem voz e que precisa ser ouvida e que precisa de diálogos é uma das questões primordiais da infância. Essa voz da criança demonstra que ela é um pequeno sujeito humano em formação. Ela precisa ser ouvida, ela precisa ser considerada.
O que eu quero fazer para meus filhos, eu quero enxergar eles. Eu quero que eles saibam que eles têm uma voz e que eu estou enxergando eles. Eu acho que de vez em quando eles só querem escutar que você entende.
There are people all across the political spectrum, going from at one extreme, people who feel that this is all about individual responsibility. At the other extreme are people who feel like this is all about the public's responsibility. And obviously, they're both saying something really important. But the problem is when political values are mostly angry with adults who are not giving children what they need or want to punish them, or minimally don't want to help them. You say, I'll be glad to help the kids, but I'm not gonna help those adults. Well, what science tells us is you can't help little kids without helping the adults who are caring for them, because the kids are not helped by programs, they're helped by people. And even for people who say, you know, I do a good job taking care of my kids, I work hard, I don't have things don't come easy, but I'm doing well by my children. And it's unfair to ask me to take responsibility for what other people are not doing for their children. I'm just worried about my own. The answer to that is, well, your own children, when they grow up, their lives are going to be easier or tougher based on how many other people their age are contributing to society or are a burden on society, right? So if you want your children to have a good future and your grandchildren to have a good future, you want the other people their age to be educationally accomplished, economically productive, and responsible citizens. Ultimately, this is a societal problem because the consequences of not providing what children need are very expensive to society.
The point is that much of the economic growth of the society depends on the skills, the capabilities, the capacities of the people in that society. The fact that you develop skills early in life means that you are able to better participate in every other activity down the life cycle. The study in Jamaica that was actually conducted was a study that actually looked at supplementing the early lives. These are kids 9 to 24 months old who were stunted, children. They were all living in the slums in Jamaica, and these kids had huge developmental disadvantages. So the question is, if you supplement their lives by giving them better food, more nutrition, and giving them cognitive, social, and emotional stimulation, just encouraging the interaction between the parent and the child, the question is, how would that affect their lifetime trajectories? Would they become more successful? And the answer was that yes, when you gave these kids certain kinds of supplementation, in particular cognitive and social and emotional stimulation, that you actually found substantial improvements at age 22. These kids were more likely to be educated, less likely to be engaged in crime, much more likely to migrate to either the US or UK. They had much higher earnings at age 22. And so what the child development experts will talk about is scaffolding, basically building a relationship between the mother and the child, and it's usually the mother, so that the mother can actually understand where the child's at, where the next stage in development might be for the child, and exactly how to respond to the disappointments the child might have, and the challenges the child might face, and then the growth that the child experiences so that she could take the child to the next step. Just kind of bumping the kid along and staying with the kid and encouraging the kid. Parenting, in other words.
E no Brasil, existe o programa Infância Melhor, PIM, lá no Rio Grande do Sul. Há um custo de mais ou menos $500 por criança por ano. Um preso hoje no Brasil, no sistema federal, ele gasta mais ou menos, ele custa ao Estado mais ou menos R$27 mil por ano. Se você tiver 100 crianças que receberem um investimento na primeira infância, se a gente olhar qual que é o impacto disso sobre criminalidade, só enquanto que a gente vai poupar sobre custo com presos, mais do que paga esse investimento. Então, é investimento. A gente gasta um pouco agora, o retorno no futuro é muito grande.
Outro dedinho. Olha bem, que cor tu pegou?
In the United States, we've conducted these studies that show what is the benefit of $1 of investment in the early years of the child. What we found when we only consider these more limited objectives like earnings and employment and things like crime, that we find that each dollar invested pays back over the lifetime about $7, which is a very high return, much higher than the stock market in the United States, much higher than many, many other returns that we actually might find.
Early childhood development has been considered one of the most cost-effective strategies to fight poverty. Why? Because there are so many ways we move that forward. The first is the child herself. When we invest in the child herself from the first years of life, we are building her human capital. We are enabling her to transition to school, to succeed in school, to continue to secondary education, and becoming an earning, productive citizen of society. But that's not the only way. When we start investing in early childhood, we start to see benefits for the little child's immediate family. We see her older siblings can go to school now. They no longer have to take care of her. We start to see economic growth because the mothers have a chance to work. The mothers now have an ability to earn an income. But those are all the tangible forms. There are also other forms that we see. One of the ones that we are starting to see is parenting is a very powerful tool of empowerment. In many parts of the world, for many women, when they have a child, it's the first time they see themselves as an agent of change. Until then, they are either a daughter or a wife, and they're always told what to do. That sense of empowerment starts to translate into other practices, into other ways in which then we see them being able to fight poverty. Because poverty, as we know, has many faces and many dimensions. And this is one of the many, many ways we see pathways between early childhood and poverty reduction.
For me, if there would be anybody or any government that is serious about the development of their children or the future of their nation, as somebody who is investing in parenting, creating opportunities for parents that will give them space also to have quality time with the family.
There are studies that show that this is the best investment a society can make. And the return on that investment, if I can speak in business terms, is tremendous. It's confidence, it's health, it's productivity, which all adds up to a vibrant economy. So when we help the child, when we invest in early childhood, we invest in society as a whole. And understanding that when you pay attention to the beginning of a story, you can change the whole story for the better.